Mr. Mayor, Excellencies, my gorgeous wife, thank you for hanging around for 34 years. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you. It is always such a privilege and an honor to stand here in this extraordinary place, the Stoa. It always gives me goosebumps to stand here. The Athens Democracy Forum was conceived and founded by the New York Times over a decade ago, as Achilles just said. But in 2019, a decision was made to house it under the custodianship of the Democracy and Culture Foundation, still in association with the Times and with the faithful support of the city of Athens and of the Kofi Annan Foundation. I would like to congratulate you, Achilles, and your team for how they have nurtured, or you have nurtured, and developed the forum into what it is today. I think when we started, it was a couple of dozen people. It is really terrific to see that in partnership with the European University Institute and other important partners from civil society, that the forum continues to attract fantastic speakers, and that it has expanded to include 3 days of a People's Assembly with citizens from Greece and other European countries selected by sortition. It is so important to open assemblies like this to the voices of young citizens. But of course, none of this would be possible without the support of the forum sponsors. And on behalf of the Democracy and Culture Foundation, I would like to thank headline sponsor Microsoft, goal sponsor Google, and other sponsors like Global Challenges Foundation, Climate Democracy Initiative, Arizona State University, Libra Philanthropies, and the Berggruen Institute, and so many others on the screens, well, no screens, but around us. The support of these sponsors has enabled this forum to extend far beyond its the rooms in the Grand Bretagne Hotel, into the special report in today's international edition of the New York Times. And there will be a follow-up report next week, I believe on October the 10th, distributed in more than 160 countries. Truth, and therefore I would suggest trust, after all, it is difficult to have one without the other, is the theme of this year's conference. It is particularly relevant at a time when truth, and therefore trust, seems to be seen by many as an increasingly rare commodity. Trust, ultimately, is the bedrock of democracy. Trust that those we choose to lead us will work to ensure our prosperity and security, that they will not succumb to greed for hunger or power, and that, here we vote them out of office, there will be a peaceful and smooth transition. It was the violation of this elemental trust that prompted the founders of America's democracy to declare that it was their right, their duty, to throw off a government that grievously violated this trust. Trust, however, requires a shared faith in democracy, what the writers of the American Declaration of Independence called self-evident truths. If we do not hold any truths to be self-evident, there cannot be trust. There cannot be shared faith. And that is the crisis of democracy today, the loss of shared terms of reference, the loss of faith in universal democratic standards, the fragmentation of society into pods of exclusive ideologies that hold all others to be wrong or fake. Truth has been reduced to a commodity to be manipulated and battered by cynically partisan media, shameless politicians, and even religious leaders. Misinformation, sometimes generated by artificial intelligence, often spawned by authoritarian governments and platformed by social media companies, has invaded our media, spreading lies and conspiracy theories intended to undermine the fact, science, and decency, and to spread discord and animosity. Trust in the institutions of government and the law are commensurately at an all-time low. So if we are to revive a faith in democracy, it is a task of those that treasure it and the freedom it provides, the human rights it adheres to, and the laws that it upholds, to find ways to counter the insidious forces that deliberately undermine it. The task and the role of the organization I represent, the New York Times, is, as it has always been, to adhere steadfastly to rigorous, deeply reported, independent journalism. Overcoming misinformation and polarization and bringing communities together to understand the options, make hard decisions, and take action requires trustworthy facts and mutual understanding. It requires independent journalism. But let me just pause here to define what we mean by journalistic independence at the New York Times. And this is as articulated earlier this year by our publisher, A.G. Salzberger. You can think of it as a first-order commitment to open-mindedness. Journalistic independence demands a willingness to follow the facts, even when they lead you away from what you assumed would be true. A willingness to engage at once empathetically and skeptically with a wide variety of people and perspectives. An insistence on reflecting the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. A posture of curiosity rather than conviction, of humility rather than righteousness. Where there is overwhelming evidence, independence means plainly stating the facts, even if they appear to favor one side. And in much more frequent cases, when the facts are unclear or their interpretation under reasonable debate, independence means empowering readers to understand and digest that ambiguity themselves. Independence does not mean both-sidism. It doesn't mean centrism or neoliberalism or a defense of the status quo. It is not a get-out-of-jail-free card for inaccurate or unfair coverage. And it is also not an innate personal characteristic any of us were born with. It's a professional discipline to which journalists must recommit every day. This discipline is rooted in process, things like soliciting a range of perspectives, confirmation from multiple sources, fact-checking, ethics guidelines, prohibitions on conflicts of interest. It requires diversity in the broadest sense. Newsrooms that embrace journalists with different backgrounds and worldviews will spot more stories and imbue them with greater nuance and insight. It is by abiding to these principles, the principles required for informing a healthy democracy, that we can play our role in safeguarding it. Thank you.